Hi and welcome to Soul Chat with me, Angie Latham. And today I'm really excited to have one of my really good friends, Sydney Taylor, come to chat with me about all things astrology. Well, actually, we're going to talk mainly about how you can find your destiny path from looking at your astrology chart, and especially the north and south nodes of fate. Okay, but before we get into that, so I'll just introduce you to Sydney for those who don't know her. So she's a member of the Soul Collective, the Facebook group that I'm an admin and one of the founding members for. So this Soul Chat will be posted on there. And Sydney is a multi-talented lady. She's a spirit medium, she's a tarot reader, she's an astrologer, so she does astrology readings, and she teaches astrology and tarot as well. You also do development circles, and when you were in the UK, because you're in the US now, but when I knew you were in the UK, you were also organising mind, body, spirit fairs, weren't you? So yeah, that and you know, I took part in some of those as well. And then in 2019, you were ordained as a spiritualist minister as well. So you know, you've got such a bag of tricks, and you're multi-talented, like all the people I know. But so you're in the US now, aren't you, Sydney? Do you want to say where you're based now?
I'm living right now in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is on the border of Old Mexico and Texas, and as well. So southern part of the states,
yeah. But you're still doing development circles, aren't you? Do you do those on Zoom?
My Zoom, because we moved over here in 2019. Everything shut down with COVID. And so I haven't been able to open circles to people, that I've been mostly connecting with a lot of the people from England that I worked with before, because I don't really have my group over here yet.
Yeah. Well, so hopefully today I'll introduce you to some more people, and we do have people in the US on the Soul Collective group. So so if anybody wants to reach out to you and get in touch with you, and yeah, so that would be great. So it's astrology that we're really interested in today. So because you've been looking more into the nodes of fate in people's charts, haven't you? And so can you just kind of, like, for people who don't know what those are, because they're not really explained very well in people's charts, are they? Do you really just sort of explain what the nodes are about?
Well, basically, the South Node represents your past. It's what you have come here, the skills you have amassed over several lifetimes, many lifetimes. It's who you feel comfortable with, the you that you feel comfortable with. You know who you are, you're comfortable with that energy. But as you come into a new incarnation, you come in with a different, well, you have a soul's path that continues through many, many lifetimes. But my feeling about astrology is that you come in each incarnation to progress your soul's path. And so in order to do that, you have certain areas that you have strengths in, and you also have certain areas you have weaknesses in. So the natal chart shows you your potentials and your tendencies. So our tendency is to fall back into our South Node, which we've had many comfortable lives working that energy. So we come in here to find out what area will I work on to help further my soul path. So, and you're right, most astrologers don't really address that. I love astrology because we're discovering new planets every day. You know, so much new information is coming in. And that means every time a new planet is discovered, a new archetype of energy comes in. So it's just so fascinating. And so now people are really, because of this shift to the higher dimension, people are wanting to know why they're here. What is their direction?
Yeah, and that's definitely something I wanted to talk to you about, because we are moving forward in our consciousness. The frequency of the planet is rising. consciousness is rising because of that frequency change. So of course, I mean, 10-20 years ago, people would come to an astrologer to see what their personality was like, wasn't it? What's my personality? What's my birth chart? And now what I'm finding is that people are much more interested in, why am I here? You know, what I feel like I've got a purpose here. What is it? How can I fulfill that purpose? So you're saying really that looking at the north and south nodes are a really good indication of what our soul is wanting to grow from and to achieve in this lifetime, which may not be what we're comfortable and used to. So
it's often not what we're comfortable with, because you know, everything works in polarities. So if you come in with certain strengths, the opposite of that is the weaknesses in that area. So it's all about working towards that ultimate goal of your destiny.
Because of course, what we want to experience and learn as a soul can be often very different from how we feel as a human and what the ego is comfortable with, isn't it? So I see many people resisting what they would like to do or what they're called to do because of their limiting beliefs or their cultural religious programming. And this is part of the reason why I find that the North Node of Fate so fascinating, is that it really can give you that sort of GPS sort of type it in. It's almost like we've left a GPS clue for ourselves about where
it's our imprint, our map, our map to get to that final place of knowing, if you will, and oneness that we're supposed to experience.
So instead of just getting into our car and just sort of randomly kind of driving out and wondering why we get stuck down dead ends and alleyways and stuff, if we kind of look at our chart and find out what the GPS is, what the address is that we're supposed to be going to, then it gives us a bit of a clue of what direction to head in and where to turn left and where to turn right.
Absolutely. Because if you think about it, when we come in with those strengths from past lives. So as we're young people growing into maturity and things like that, our life path will begin to take direction. And a lot of that is based upon the planetary transit. So there are cycles. When they talk about a midlife crisis, that's a cycle, an astrological cycle, a planetary cycle that everyone experiences. So like every 7 years, you'll have a different connection with Saturn. Every 12 years, a different one with Jupiter. So as the planets move, hopefully you mature and begin to grow closer to your soul path. So in a way, it's a shame that in your early 20s, people are expected to know what they want to do for a career.
Absolutely, because you're
you
still
don't really know
yourself. And I suppose this is why come sort of like your 30s and 40s, well, that's what creates the midlife crisis, isn't it? So we've got the Saturn return that people may be familiar with, and that's your 29-30, isn't it?
Exactly. And now that's the time when and Saturn rules your reputation and your career. So when Saturn returns to the point that you were where it was when you were born, you're beginning to look at career. Am I doing what I want to do? So if you spent 6 years, 4 years in university trying to figure it out, sometimes when you reach your late 20s, that you get a spark like, oh,
yes,
I like this much better. Why am I doing this? So in a way, it's unfortunate that we train our children, and also the expectation to do what daddy did or to do what mother expects you to do. So it's really often much later in life that you actually do realize your true path. But if you knew it beforehand, it might help you make your university choices better.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're telling me that kind of if you're thinking of taking your university courses, then having a look at your astrology chart. Somebody who can read the north nodes and the south node is really handy. I can really see that, actually. I mean, I know that, you know, I'm 49 now, so what I'm doing, I feel now I am completely stepping onto what I've always supposed to been doing, but as society would see that, then I'm a bit of a failure, that it's, you know, that I've been kind of wandering from pillar to post for 49 years. But actually, I couldn't be doing the work that I'm doing now without that 49 years of experience and knowledge. So for what I am choosing to do, I needed all of that life experience to be able to. And it's okay to talk about things in theory, but I think, you know, if you go off to university or college or whatever and learn theoretical stuff out of the book, that's all fine, you know, but I think people really know when you've been through it yourself, when you're talking from experience. And so there's a different resonance to somebody who's like, I've really been through this, and so I understand how you're feeling, and this is how, you know, I can help you navigate through these issues and problems. There's a real difference to that from somebody coming out of maybe counseling course or a psychology course, thinking that they know how the mind works, but maybe haven't been through the heart-led experience of it. So I think a lot of healers and therapists now that are really stepping up, that I'm seeing in my community, are the ones that are in their sort of like 40s, 50s, and even older. You know, where normal society, once you get into your 50s and 60s, we're sort of it's almost like we start to write people off. But actually, this is the time when people are actually coming into their wisdom years, isn't it? And into their real power, where they can really help others to move forward. So yeah,
because by that time they have actually moved beyond their south node and heading in the direction of their north node, which is their true destiny.
Because we've got we've got the Saturn return, but we've also got the Chiron return, haven't we? Which
that's the other thing I was going to say. That takes place around the age of 50. So that, combined with Saturn, they're great maturity transits. You know, Chiron is that wound. If you can heal it, you can heal others. So when you reach the age of 50, you're also doing Saturn again, and you've got all these other planets doing their thing. But what you haven't dealt with in that wound is where you can heal and help others. So you're getting ready to go into your Chiron return if you haven't already.
I know. I'm kind of very aware of that. And also it interests me that for women, especially, that, you know, we have our Chiron return, and we're going through that Chiron return at the same time that many women are starting to go through the menopause, you know, which is supposed to be a bit of a crazy time anyway. So it is a bit of a sort of a Kylie cycle, isn't it, where you just you know, literally the fire comes up and you're burning everything off that really no longer serves you anymore, that really you don't want to take forward into the, you know, into the remainder of your lifespan here, I think. And I think with all of this kind of work, if you're living from a heart-led conscious way, then you're going to go through these transits much more smoothly and with more grace and ease. That if you're resisting, so and what I mean by resisting is that if you know that you shouldn't be in that job or that marriage or whatever it is, then if you're resisting that and staying in there because it's the comfort zone and better the devil you know, then when these kind of transits come around, they are like the tarot card, the tarot, aren't they? They're going to demolish everything that really
rip it away,
your
so you can go back to
because
basics.
your soul is in charge at the end of the day. No matter how safe the human part of us wants to be in our little safe house, and it's kind of the soul will go, I'm not going where I want you to go. I'm not learning, and I'm not growing like I really wanted to. So I'm going to take some of this stuff out the way. And so I think it's really important for us to know our charts. It's really handy. But what I would say, and this is and I think this is the same with anything, so whether you're going for a tarot reading or numerology reading or astrology reading, you know, I see some people going for readings and then it's almost like they make it into a victim story. So, oh, I'm a Virgo with this in, Pluto in what's it, and it's squared to this. So that means I'll always be unhappy in love or whatever. So, and it's not really like that, is it? What it's given us is the energetic ingredients and what we bake with it, if you like.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to speak about that?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, every energy has a higher expression and a lower expression.
Yeah.
And so that's where free will comes into our charts. Your natal chart is a map of what you have learned, what you're comfortable with, what you're likely to do based upon your previous lives. But it also gives you potentials to grow. And so everyone has free will. So if you hear things like, oh, Scorpios, oh God, they're so manipulative, they're horrible, they'll sting you. That's the downside of Scorpio energy: control, power, that kind of thing. The high side is transcendental. It's transformation.
Yes.
And if you know anyone with Scorpio, a lot of Scorpio, they've suffered in their lives. Most people with strong Plutonian flavors to their chart know what it is to suffer, to have been abused or whatever.
Yeah.
So if they can work with that energy and heal it, then it becomes a transformative energy for them to work with others.
Yes.
Same thing with Capricorns. Oh, they're money grubbing climbers. They step on everybody to get to the top. Well, the most ethical sign in the zodiac is Capricorn, because Capricorn becomes the wise old crone in her maturity.
Yeah.
So everybody has a path and a destiny. It's how you choose it, which is why somebody could be born with certain characteristics exactly the same as someone else, and one could be a murderer and one could be a saint.
Yeah.
So it's how you choose, because we have choice.
Free will. Yeah. And that is why, as far as I understand it, why souls love coming to Earth and explore the emotional learning of Earth, because we do have that free will. Because in any other planet and dimension and reality, we understand that we co-create our reality, whereas when we come here we don't know. And but we do have that free will, so we are allowed to follow our path, or we can say no. But the soul will do its utmost to try and get us to learn and grow the way that it wanted us to do. So it will
I'm
always...
sure other galaxies think we're crazy to choose to come here, other planets, and think, what are they thinking?
Yeah, but then I've heard time and time again from the teachers that I follow that Earth at this time is going through such an amazing change in consciousness, and we are the kind of all eyes of the universe are on Earth, because it's never been done before that we've shifted into this higher dimension consciously. So I mean, if I had any doubts about astrology before 2020, they just went away in 2020, because the astrology for 2020 and still going on, I mean, 2020 to 2024, isn't it? Is incredible. So again, for anybody who's kind of sat there thinking, well, what on earth is going on astrologically at the moment? Can you kind of, shed some light on what's happening with Capricorn and Saturn and Pluto? And,
let me pull up
that demolition ball is going.
Well, oh God. So much has happened over the last couple of years. We had the, let me pull up.
So it really kicked off last January, February, with the conjunction, wasn't it? That big,
that big conjunction with Pluto. Yes, Pluto is about endings, and God, I gotta remember what all, because there's been so many different significant planetary things. I can't remember when they all happened.
The general trend of what's happening with the old.
Well, we had Saturn in Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn. Saturn is the old guard. Saturn is the tried, true, tested, earthy. This is how the status quo is. And Pluto says, time to end that. We're going to go in a different direction. So that was so powerful last year. It's great. And Saturn is structure.
Yeah.
Saturn is government, big
Yes.
business.
Top down.
So
Yeah.
top down, and Pluto is all powerful, and it ends things in order to transform them into something better.
So my guys
So
just like showed me that Saturn is the building and Pluto's the wrecking ball, and it's just
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then you throw Uranus into the mix. Uranus is like the tower. Well, let's make it happen suddenly.
Yes.
So
No
out of the
gradual.
blue, let's give them a
Yes.
pandemic.
Yes.
Neptune is the pandemic. Neptune's in its own sign, so it's stronger in its own sign. So Neptune in Pisces is a pandemic.
Yeah.
However, most astrologers knew something big was coming, but couldn't exactly pin it down on how it would manifest.
Yeah.
And with the Neptune, it became a pandemic.
Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? That what astrology really does is it gives you the energetic trends. So it gives you the structure and kind of how we fill it in as a collective, how it manifests is very much down to how we as humans are, as a collective, are co-creating and where our attention is. So like you said, the energy is neither good or bad. It just shows you what is likely to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some of these things have not happened for 2,000 years, so it truly is an incredible shift for our planet. We are actually going into another dimension. And it's because the planets are interacting with each other the way they are. That's how strong it is. And some of these, a lot of what was happening when you had the Saturn Uranus square, again, Uranus is sudden disruption. Saturn's to the norm, to structures, to stability, to governments, to big business, to finances. I can guarantee you all of that is changing. In a big way.
Yeah. And again, we don't know yet whether it's going to be positive or negative. It's partly where we, in each of us individually, are putting our attention and resonance on, which is why it's so important to focus on how we do want this to go, rather than get too distracted and pulled into fear about where we don't want things to go, because then we're kind of contributing to that lower timeline, because everything is energy and frequency at the end of the day. Our thoughts are energy and vibration, our feelings are energy and vibration. So and that, especially through last year, there was so much fear about, I mean, there still is a lot of fear about, but also I see pockets of light coming in now. And for anybody that's kind of listening to this thinking, oh my God, this sounds awful, doom and gloom, we're going to have this kind of, pandemic forever, that we have got some kind of light on the horizon with the astrology.
Absolutely we do. This is all happening because the world isn't functioning right. There is so much disparity in the world between the haves and the have-nots. It's a time of revolution. Uranus is revolution. We also, back in, hold on a second. Let me get this up here. Where is it? Okay, so back in December, we had a big move when we had the conjunction of two planets in earth signs moving into air signs. Big difference in energy. So we had Earth is all about, it's that old Saturn stuff. It's dense. It's earth energy. It's grounded. Well, you move into air energy and it's totally different. It's thoughts. It's creating with your thoughts. So it is a great shift in times to manifest what you want, because as you and I both know, and many of people that do what we do know, that the time has come for us all to move into our own power. And so when we shifted into an air sign, as you, you will see it as you believe it, all of those kind of things, what you focus on expands. So your thoughts become so much more important in these next 20 years when we're working with air. We
Yes.
can manifest by believing that what we imagine can become a reality.
Yeah.
So that's the hope,
Yeah.
and not just that, but it's got to change. We've moved into Aquarian energy. Aquarius is about humanity, oneness, loving each other as we love ourselves. It truly is what Jesus was trying to teach.
Yes. Yes.
That we're all one.
Yes.
And now that we're dealing with Aquarian energy, a lot more people are discovering their path is to help humanity. And what I read that I think is so really cool was that it talked about us all being star seeds connected to other galaxies. And I don't know how it's explained exactly, but it was like we've been offline for a long time.
Yes.
And now we're going online.
Yes.
With our own place that we came from.
Yes.
I've got goosebumps all over.
Yeah.
So it's a really exciting time. But I look at it as a birth that takes 9 months, So during that 9 months, things are slowly changing and growing. And then you come to the moment of birth, and it's painful, it's hard. And that's where we are in this life cycle of this planet.
Absolutely.
We're coming to a birthing point of renewal to take us all into a much higher elevated energy.
Yeah.
So,
And I think,
you've got to let go of the crap.
Yes. Yes.
So
absolutely.
you start clean.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, it's very much about coming down from the ego mind and coming back down into the heart, which which to me is the true gateway to the soul. So when you're heart centered, you do have that awareness and knowledge that you are all one, that there is no competition, that we are, we all human beings want the same thing.
Yes.
Which is love and happiness and kindness and to be loved and, and safety. And, certainly, in my lifetime, society has tried to teach us that everything that makes us successful or happy is to do with things outside of us, so the car, the house, the partner, the fame, it's all external. And it's very mind driven. So and it's empty. And that's why it's not fulfilling anybody, because you get that bigger house or you get that, Ferrari or whatever. And okay, you have a quick burst of sort of like, oh yes, this is amazing. But it soon dissipates because we're not aligned inside. We're not fulfilling our hearts, and we're not doing we're funneled into to pursuing careers and jobs for the 6-figure salary or the kind of what's the word I want, the prestige of saying, oh yes, I'm a CEO of this company, or oh yes, I'm a lawyer, or I'm a doctor, or whatever it is. And it's kind of it's not really about, but does that bring you joy? You could be a lawyer on 6 figures and have a great big car, but if you don't enjoy what you do, if you're not giving that out from the heart center, then what really are you contributing, and what really coming back to you? It's empty. It's emptiness, and you're trying to fill that emptiness with other external empty things. So I think for those people that might be kind of watching this and thinking, oh, we're still stuck in that kind of, I would invite people to just look at sort of, just in the last 10 years, how the self-care, self-growth arena has expanded. I mean, even things like yoga, Reiki, I hardly know anybody that doesn't do some sort of yoga.
I know. Well, interesting you say that, because I read something yesterday that in Alabama, which is in the Bible Belt, deep south, that there's a law on the books against yoga because it might turn people into Hinduism or something like that. And it's still on the books today that in I think it was Alabama, that they're trying to rescind a law about yoga. I mean,
but that's a good reflection of a good reflection of the old paradigm trying to hang on, isn't it? And they can't,
absolutely, yeah.
because as consciousness raises, then you and people start to understand that there is no threat. Well, that's just a silly way of looking at it. So it loses its traction. And I've come across this with my sound healing as well. You know, in the odd little village where they've refused to allow me to hold sound baths because it's a type of meditation, and it involves a gong, so it must be sort of like Eastern, you know, woo-woo stuff going on, you know, that's not aligned with Christianity. And you know, I am a really Jesus girl, you know. I
know, yeah, me too.
I'm not a fan of Christianity, the religion, cool but I am a fan of Yeshua, of the Magdalene, of that heart-centered, unconditional love. You know, the kingdom of heaven is inside you and all around you, which is basically another way of saying we are all one, isn't it? We're all love. We're all one.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think of a couple of things that have happened that you and I know about. When I wanted to be ordained, I was looking for a place, you know, near, because the church that I'm being ordained was was an hour away from me. So I wanted something more local. So I was looking for a venue and went to this a Christian retreat, and told them I wanted to have it. And I mentioned that my lovely friend Angie had offered to do a gong bath for me. Well, then I got an email back that they didn't feel that they could accommodate me because they didn't know exactly what that meant, and you know, and that
maybe it was summoning demons with the gong.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, I couldn't figure out why they didn't think it was okay, but you know. And then when I was running psychic fairs in Borton on the Water, I'd done several of them there, no problems or anything. And then the next time I started to plan one, I got a message that someone in the parish council had objected because they didn't know what we people do. so we had to be watched for the next fair to make sure that we didn't do, you know.
There were no live involved.
Yes, I had one of my friends say something about, they thought we were having a naked tea party or something, you know. But it is crazy how,
isn't it, how that kind of, to me, that mindset is so old paradigm. It's so unconscious and in the shadows almost, because you know, we're all entitled to have our direct connection with source, God energy, whether you call it God or source or, you know, universal consciousness or Buddha or Allah, it doesn't matter. It's that, as long as you're doing it with love, then you know, it's just different labels, but it's love inside, and that's what
absolutely
But we are leaving that behind. These are the things that are starting to crumble, isn't it? Because they can't hold on anymore, because it doesn't their reasons don't hold up. They're not legitimate anymore. And you know, I suppose it's up to these kind of old paradigms whether they want to go out kicking and screaming, or whether they want to raise their own consciousness. So
but
again,
if they kick and scream,
will, isn't it?
Exactly. And everyone has a choice at this point in time, whether we want to ascend with the planet, or we want to stay stuck. And you know,
we've definitely got that fork in the road, haven't we? So and it is,
we're there now. We have to make the choice now. It's like, there's no more time to waste. Make your choice now. Are you going to fight the tide, or are you going to go with it? And what's going to have to change is the way we look at healing in particular, because we're just, you know, we've discovered that it's all energy, and yet trying to find governments who will pay for alternative therapies is going to take a while to get them behind this kind of thing. Acupuncture, sound healing, you know, Reiki, all of that. Oh, they're okay for you to do it now. They're loosening up a bit where they're not saying you can't, but they're not going to pay for it either. You know, so there's so much. They're not going to
pay for it yet. But it is creeping in. It is creeping in.
It's evolving.
It is evolving.
But it's not going to happen overnight.
No. But then I suppose that's the thing. We are in well, you know, we're in a 10-year decade of change, aren't we? Slow change. And
absolutely,
when you're living it second to second, minute to minute, hour to hour, it just feels like nothing is changing, nothing's going, you know. But actually, if you look back at it, I mean, how much have we changed in the last 10 years? How much have we changed in the last 20 years? So, you know, when you look back at it like that, it is actually a very quick turnaround. I mean, the 1950s, we wouldn't even be able to have a conversation like this, you know. And yet that's one person's not even lifetime ago, you know. So so I think things are changing a lot quicker than we think of them. It's just that our perception of time is very slow and linear. But I think it's an amazing time to be alive.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's terrifying, but it's also exhilarating. And it is just like the proverbial roller coaster, isn't it? It's kind of like, it's thrilling and you know, terrifying at the same time. But yeah. So we've gone off topic.
As you do.
It's always going to happen.
Happens every time.
But I love these chats, and I love how they go, because I'm very guided by spirit to what we're doing and what we're saying, and I always trust that whatever we say ends up being what most people are wanting and needing to hear. So I'm interested about that. But just to sort of like pull it back to the north nodes and south nodes. So we're going to demonstrate, aren't we, by using my chart. You've been doing my chart, and you call this a particular reading, don't you? Is it a soul plan reading or
a soul path reading?
Soul path reading.
Path reading, or destiny reading, whatever you want to. But it's really the direction your soul is supposed to be going to. And the way you can determine it is by the nodal axis, and then the planetary rulers and houses that they fall in, and that type of thing. And that gives you just a wealth of information about a person's direction, and also how they probably will go about achieving that.
Okay, so it would be really interesting to see what you found out from mine, and see where it kind of correlates, because that would be the great example, wouldn't it, really?
It correlates beautifully. Okay, so North Node, where you're going to, what you've come in here to do. Yours is Aquarius. Well, guess what? It's a very humanitarian energy. It's bringing that that equality to people. It's Aquarius rules groups and organizations, friendships, but it also rules hopes and dreams. Aquarius people want to bring everyone together. You know, if you know anybody who's an Aquarius, they know everybody. You know, I've got almost everyone I met in the Cotswolds was through an initial contact with one Aquarian woman. You know, it just goes like that. So definitely people, very independent. You're going to do it your way. So it's a very independent.
I wonder if my husband would agree with that. I think.
Well, I don't know. I bet we might get an answer from him. It can be a very rebellious. So, I mean, your soul will rebel against structure and rigidity. It needs freedom. It needs independence. You've got to do it. That song, I Did It My Way, perfect song for an Aquarian North Node. You know, you're coming in to change things in a much more humanitarian way. You want equality for people. You want everyone to feel freedom, and that. It's also Aquarius energy. It's almost like, well, it's the higher mind. So it's like the higher octave of Mercury. Mercury, you come in and you learn all the basics. Uranus is that divine higher spark. And Uranus rules Aquarius, is why I'm using Uranus. So you've come in with that spark of wisdom that you want to impart to everyone. And interestingly, it falls in your 11th house. So you speak to groups and organizations and friends about what you have learned about how humanity is supposed to work. And again, the Uranus is that ruler. Your planetary ruler's house is in the 6th house, which is your house of work, daily routine. So what you have come here to do on a daily basis is to work in a healing field, because the sixth house rules healing. So what do? You come in here and your ultimate goal, you're there. You are on your path. You're doing sound healing. Again, that goes back to that Mercury with the eclipse that we talked about before we came on.
Yeah.
And sixth house is service to others.
Yeah.
The 11th house, sixth house is service one-on-one. So you can heal people on a one-on-one, but you've got that Aquarian energy in the 11th. So you're a universal healer. Okay. You've come here to work with the masses to heal them.
It's funny
in
because
your daily life.
We were talking about the kind of the split between sort of the human part of us and the soul part of us, and the soul part of me really wants to do that big scale humanitarian networking. You know, this is part of the reason why I've started the soul chats, because I want to sort of like reach more people. I want to get more people networked with other therapists.
You could use the word network to apply to an Aquarian or Aquarius energy. They're networkers. They get it out there. They want everybody to know. So you have come beautifully working your path with your sixth house planetary ruler and your 11th house, you know, with the node in the 11th house. So you've got, you know, you're doing what, and you do it every day.
Yes, it is something that I feel I've got to do. This is my work. It's not something that I want to do as a side hobby or at weekends. It's like my soul wants me to do this, like day to day.
It's driving you.
Yes, it is. It's the driving force.
Yes. And most people during these times will be driven towards that North Node, because that's what it's about. We're all trying to get there so we can go up.
Yeah.
And so then if you look at your South Node, what you're comfortable with, you're comfortable taking care of yourself. It's that Leo energy. It's royal energy. You know, Leo is the royal person. So you probably were royalty in a previous life. And probably through that, you've had negative and positive reactions to being royal. You might have at one time abused that ability to rule over people. And then you learned that to be a true royal, you have to also take care of others. So your soul decides to, okay, I've got me down. I've taken care of Leo me. I know how to take care of me. Now I've got to impart my wisdom that I've learned through taking care of myself, your South Node. I now know how to take care of others. So there's your axis there. Because Leo is hard energy. So your past was heart-centered. But again, it could have been an abuse of power if you were royal, or you could have been a victim of power. So as a result, you've learned how to take care of yourself, so that now your soul says, okay, let's go take care of others now. Let everyone else know that wisdom that you learned from being a leader, because Leo is a leader as well.
Yeah. So I'm kind of guessing that wouldn't necessarily be just the Leo aspect, just one life. So I might have not just had one wonderful life of royalty, but I may have been having many lives where sometimes I was the perpetrator, sometimes I was the victim. And
absolutely, because you probably played out both sides over the course of many lifetimes. In fact, let me look at your degree. Because I remember you had some interesting degrees in your chart, like you had a 29-degree Pluto, so ending of certain types of energy.
Well, I'm a 2911 life path, if you remember.
Yeah. Oh, I've got goosebumps again. Yeah, 2911 life path. And Pluto, which is a power of control, is at 29 degrees in Virgo. So you pretty much mastered Virgo energy too. You know, that detailed, you know, you can do detail. You're very discerning. Virgo's a very discerning energy. It picks up on details. So you're good at that. So that 29 degrees. So that's a whole nother thing you can look at, aneretic degrees, but that's off on an aside, so I won't go there.
Yeah.
So back to your path. So you've got that strong sense of self that you've come in, and the way you're working your way to that Aquarius is through your 11th and 6th houses. Okay. And then
so that's work. Also, service.
That's work and daily routine, service to others. and to groups of people and organizations. So that's your north node. Your south node is in the 5th house. So that Leo heart energy is appearing in your 5th house of creativity. What do? Beautiful pictures, lovely sounds. So you're creative with the way you use your past life energy. So you've come in with that heartfelt Leo energy, and you're creating through sound. And your 5th house, which is love affairs, fun, sports, and children. So you're comfortable in those areas, the creativity. The 5th house, is ruled by the sun. And the sun is all about creativity in you, yourself, sense of who you are. So you have beautifully brought your south node energy in to develop your north node requirements. And then your midheaven is in Capricorn. So midheaven is also another area you might want to look to see where you might put your focus in terms of how you manifest.
So what is the midheaven in your chart? What does it represent, Sydney?
Okay. The midheaven represents your career and your reputation, whereas the 6th house is daily routine and daily work. It could be a job, whereas your 10th house is your career, your profession. So it's different than, so you can have a job that's just drudging and it pays your bills and all. That's your work. But your career is something you put more effort into because you've got a reputation to build.
Okay.
And so your midheaven is in Capricorn, which rules that house. So you are dedicated to having a career, that fulfills your north node.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because like I was saying earlier, I never knew really what I wanted to do, other than that I was an artist, and I've always been artistic and creative. But for a long time during my 20s and early 30s, I felt like I was just drifting directionless. And it's only really been since 2017. Although I was honest, I've always been a spiritual person. I've always been highly intuitive, but 2017 something happened where it almost like I was slammed onto this path that I'm on now. Whether the human ego me liked it or not, it was almost like the soul was just, like you said, it got to that wrecking ball and kind of like, it's time now. You need to get on the train. No more wandering around the station. You need to get on that train. So I was wondering whether there was anything that happened around 2017 that would have given a clue to why that happened. Is it?
Absolutely. Yep. Eclipses.
Okay.
Yes. So let me just finish going through this one last little thing, because we haven't completed. Because yours is such a perfect example. I want to hit every point.
Okay.
About. So we did that. So you have the midheaven is your career and all, and you're doing what you're supposed to do. Your planetary ruler is Saturn of your midheaven, and Saturn falls in your 1st house. So interestingly, having Saturn in your 1st house lowers your self-esteem. So I suspect at times you were afraid to put yourself out there.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah. So that again, you've been forced to put yourself out there. So you've overcome that Saturn structure that limits you. The 1st house is what you put out to the public. So with Saturn there's a reticence to want to go forward. So you've overcome that. Here you are, on video.
I'm still, it still takes.
But you're doing it. You're overcoming the limitations of your Saturn 1st house.
I think it's that definite. I'm feeling the fear and I'm doing it anyway. I think that's the difference. There's something happens where it's kind of like where you stop thinking, oh, I just can't do it. I can't do it. And it's kind of like, do you know what? I've got nothing else to lose. I'm gonna do it anyway, even though I'm terrified of doing it, and see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? I can't get burnt at the stake again this time.
So your tendency with that Saturn 1st house natally would be to not put yourself out there. But as you've grown, you've learned to overcome the restrictions of that Saturn first house. Then you have a moon in Gemini. So again, the moon is what makes you emotionally happy. Gemini, thinking, learning, communicating. What do?
Talking.
You communicate, you learn, and you pass that on. And so there's so many things in your chart that led you to where you are today, and it's all just wrapped up that way nicely.
So basically what we're saying here is that that your astrology chart, if somebody comes to you for one of these soul path readings, you can really give them great directions of where they should be focusing their energy on.
Yeah. And where they'll be more successful too, because your chart shows what your strengths are. So knowing that, you can look at your chart and say, well, I'm good at this. So through that method, I can further my path. And then you'd want to look at your aspects and things like that if you want to go even deeper. But that's a whole different thing, because it is so, I just can't begin to tell you how much astrology can show you what a person's life is going to be like. And then now back to the fun part. What changed in 2017 for Angie?
Well, I've noted from the healers and therapists that I've spoken to that many people had a big change of direction in that 2006.
Me included.
You included, yeah. And other people I know, and even the bigger spiritual teachers, that I follow, seem to have had some sort of big shift in 2017. So what were the eclipses, and why are eclipses important in people's charts?
Okay, well, eclipses have to do with the nodal axis. They have to do with the eclipses. I don't need to go into the technicalities or anything, but nodes are involved with eclipses. Eclipses are so powerful, and the nodal axis is your destiny. It's where you've been and where you're going. And so when an eclipse comes along, an eclipse has like 3 times the power of a new moon or a full moon. So again, that's another thing I would offer in a reading, to do a person's solar year for the coming year and where the eclipses would be impacting them and that type of thing.
So how many
eclipses are game changers
a year on average? How many eclipses
they come in pairs. You have, it kind of varies a bit. They can come in pairs, but in that year we had 4, but there's been 6 at different times, and they go the nodes move in an 18-year cycle, 18 months. Yeah, 18. It's 18. I don't know.
It is 18 months.
I'm getting confused. It's 18 months, and then they change. So you'll have a series of them.
So do those, that impacts the collective, doesn't it? That where the nodal points are will impact the collective. But if those nodal points are relevant to your personal chart, then you'll feel them even strongly. Is that sort of? And what's the difference between a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse? Because a lot of people don't understand that. And what different energies do both of them bring?
Well, a solar eclipse is a new moon. It brings in new beginnings. They tend to be more positive than lunar eclipses. The lunar eclipses are letting go, so things can come to an ending. But eclipses are so powerful when they contact your personal points in your natal chart, because they're dealing with your destiny. They're impacting how you're using your energy, and they give you opportunities to grow, to let go, on a lunar eclipse, and to start new things on a solar eclipse.
So would you say it's kind of like, it would be a great opportunity for somebody's soul to give them a kick up the butt? Would that be a good description of it?
Yes. Well, let's see about those eclipses and how they affected
you.
Let's. Okay. I think when I looked earlier, we thought the last 2 were more impactful, I think, than the first 2.
I mean, I can look back at 2017 as being a life-changing, a direction-changing year, but it was specifically the summer. So June through to August was the that's when I.
So I look at the 7th of August one, and that occurred 15 degrees Leo on the Leo. I mean, the moon was at 15 degrees Aquarius and the sun 15 degrees Leo on that axis. Well, interestingly, that's set right on top of your nodal axis.
Okay, so it's the same nodal axis as what is in my birth chart. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. The eclipse set right on top. The eclipse was at 15 degrees. Your nodes were at 14 degrees. So obviously, there are usually with an eclipse, you'd look at maybe 2 degrees either side. And so it was right on top of your nodal axis. And the moon, so at the point, the sun was next to your south node. And so the moon, where you're moving, the direction you were moving to Aquarius. So it really hits you right on your nodal axis.
Yeah,
your
right
destiny.
on my butt.
It did. It triggered you to do something. Yeah. It's almost like you were saying you just felt compelled. You know, I won't ever forget you walking out with that huge gong and thinking, "Oh my goodness!" I thought, "What's Angie doing now?" So
I was. I'm not sure whether my husband fell for it at the time, but you know, I was compelled to buy that gong.
Oh, well, yeah, I was sitting there thinking, "Whoa!" Most people come and buy crystals and jewelry. There she goes with a gong.
Yeah. £900 gong.
Definitely. Yeah. Absolutely.
But it was, I mean, I suppose the more that I do this work, the more that I can look back in hindsight and I can see very clearly where my soul took over, you know, almost like, you know, it kicks the human part of you out the way and said, you know, this is so, and it can be, sometimes it can be meeting people as well, isn't it? That all of a sudden, you need to go to that gathering or that meeting or that, you know, or the pub on that night. And it's because your soul knows that there's somebody there that you need to connect with. And, you know, it makes no sense really to the human.
You say that because on that last eclipse, the 21st eclipse on August 21st, 2017, you had also within that eclipse period, you had Jupiter in the heavens contacting your vertex, and the vertex is a fated point. So, and Jupiter can be a teacher. So you were probably compelled to learn something different with your daily routine because it fell in your 6th house. So it's just so amazing what you can see.
Because that was the point where I decided not just to buy a gong for my own meditation at home, but it was that point where I decided that actually I want to become a sound therapist. I want to do this for other people. And although initially I wanted to play it safe and do the one-to-one work, you know, one person at a time. And I actually, when I began my—
That's the Virgo.
Yeah. So when I began my sound therapist training, I was training on the one-to-one course, which is different from the group work. And I was 2 days into this 4-day intensive you know, weekend course. And it just was so wrong. And I kept coming up against, I was late every morning because I kept coming up against literal roadblocks, you know, roads were closed literally, and I was having to go round. Car was breaking down and whatever. And I was thinking, but I was so sure that I was supposed to be doing with something with sound. What is going on? And it was only when I kind of like, I sat back and thought, okay, you know, and tuned into my guides, what is going on? Because all the signs were to go into sound healing, but now I'm getting all these blocks and do not go. And it's only when I really went into meditation and tuned into my guides and my higher self that I realized, no, it's not one-to-one work, it's group work. And that was a different course. So I mean, luckily the Sound Healing Academy that I was with, you know, they allowed me to change from the one-to-one to the groups. And then from then on, it was just plain sailing really all the way. And funnily enough, I had a past life regression with somebody. Just was like, when again around that time, it was kind of July, August time. And I was basically, the human me was kind of starting to go, So you really want to, you don't want to stand up in groups. You don't want to speak in front of people. You're not really good at that sort of thing. So I was having all of these kind of, limited beliefs come up, and Anna Barrett, Anna Barrett, she gave me a past life regression. I think she might have. I think we're on the kind of, on the Cotswolds.
I might have, yeah.
And she gave me a past life regression, and she was training to be a past life regression therapist at the time. So, and I went straight back into a life in Egypt, where I was in a pyramid, and I was with, there was 3 of us ladies, women, and we were in a triangle, and we were working with sound and energy and light, and we were using sound to levitate balls of light, and and it was kind of like all this memory kind of came flooding back into me, and I knew that I'd done this before. So it was kind of, it was like a message from my guides and a message from my soul saying, this is already something that you know how to do. You've already got the skills to do it. All you have to do is kind of get the paperwork or kind of remember. So it wasn't about learning something. It was just about remembering what I know. So
well, it's kind of interesting that you mentioned, you thought it was going to be 1-to-1, because on that eclipse that conjuncted your nodes, the moon was actually in Aquarius, which is the groups. So,
okay, cool.
So you were trying to go back into your South Node more.
Yes, I was.
To your Virgo sun, the one-on-one stuff. But you were being forced by that eclipse to move into the Aquarius energy, which is the group energy. So again, everything impacts your destiny. So those eclipses spurred you. Eclipses are like I said, they have the impact of 3 new moons or 3 full moons. And if you understand how those work, new moons are new beginnings. So a solar eclipse is a massive new beginning, and a lunar eclipse is a massive letting go.
Yeah.
So that's all, along your destiny path. All of this happens to propel you where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. And it's funny because earlier that year, in kind of May, June that year, I left I left my social group with the Morris dancing and everything. I left all of that behind because it got so painful. I wasn't supposed to be there anymore, and I'd resisted and resisted and resisted. And of course, what happens when you hang on to a person, a relationship, a job, a situation that you're not supposed to be in anymore, then it will get more and more and more painful until you're just forced to let it go. So and it's
the planets that are forcing that to happen.
Because you get to a point, don't you, at critical mass, that something happens, either and if you don't let it go willingly, then a dramatic traumatic circumstance will erupt.
Your higher soul will make something happen to force you back on your path. So we've got all sorts of help from the universe. And of course, our guides and spirit and everything's helping us along this way, because you will know when you've stepped off your path, when you're miserable at the work that you're doing, when you're unhappy, when you can't sleep at night. There's a big clue there. You've kind of gotten off your path.
Yes, you're not in alignment, are you, anymore with where you're
exactly
going?
And eventually your soul will force you to face what you're not facing, and it's usually through an eclipse or some planetary transit.
And of course, the beauty of it is that the universe and our guides are always there to catch us, but the painful bit is that the human side of us doesn't know that, or doesn't understand that, or doesn't believe that. So it's really painful to let go, because it's only when you let go that then you can be caught again. You can't wait for the floor to come up to meet you before you let go of that bar. It doesn't happen like that. And actually that
go ahead.
The soul doesn't want to do that anyway, because that's not exhilarating enough at a soul level, is it? Wants the human to let go of that bar and say, I will catch you, I will catch you. And it's like, I want a guarantee.
We always want a guarantee.
Just gotta go. But
you will eventually pay the piper, if you will. At some point, your soul will be so out of sync with
Yeah.
its purpose that you will face a crisis unless you decide to go with the flow and make the changes necessary gradually instead
Yeah.
of being slammed with them. But that's why we have these cyclical things with the planets, because again, there's a whole group of us that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. So along comes an eclipse or some kind of a transit, and your spirit says, okay, you've fiddled along enough with this, time to get moving. And they will give you something to force you to make the decision. So it's much easier if you just know it's going to be a rough time and
Yeah.
you just wait it out. And
And I
that's
think
the
that,
other beauty of astrology. You can see an end to something. If
yeah.
you're going through a really difficult time, you can say, oh, but I know it's only Mars is doing this right now, and it's going to be gone in a certain amount of time. And
Yeah.
it gives you hope.
Yes,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I might have mentioned this before on other interviews that I've done, but I remember Astrologer giving me a reading in 2003. And I was in a job that I hated. I was in I had a flat that I owned, but I couldn't pay for anymore. So I was struggling to make the mortgage. My life just felt stale. I just didn't, I just needed a real overhaul. And I went to an astrologer and he said, oh, there's big changes on the way. But he was one of these astrologers that kind of hit you between the eyes. He didn't sugarcoat anything. So it was kind of like, you're probably going to lose your job. You're probably going to lose, you
Yeah.
house, you're going to, whatever. And I was like, oh, that sounds
Well,
awful.
I don't do readings like that.
But,
I always give you a positive.
yeah. But it's funny because I did need that kind of slap round the face. And he could see that I was a bit like, oh God, I came for good news and you've given me bad news,
Yeah.
if you
When
like.
was this?
But
Did
I
you
won't
say
mention his name.
2010?
I won't mention his name. But he said to me, and this is the thing, I have never forgotten what he said to me. So, I have taken that nugget of gold all the way through my life. And he said to me,
Yeah.
change is inevitable. You have a choice whether you ride that change. The wave of change is coming for you. But you have the free will. You have the choice to get on your surfboard and surf and be in charge of that change, or whether you just want to, lie there and let it wipe you out, let it come over you and go under the water. And I have never ever forgot that, and I think it is so true. So
Well, that's a free choice.
yeah,
that's your free will.
yeah, so what I ended up doing was I just thought, well, if I'm going to lose my job and I'm going to lose my house and I'm going to change my life anyway, why don't I be in charge of that? So I put my notice in, I quit my job, I sold my flat, while I made a profit from it instead of being there. And I moved to Scotland. And if I hadn't done that,
that's how you work your soul path.
yeah. So I used that energy of change and disruption in my favor to goad me forward into changing direction. And of course, if I hadn't have gone to Scotland, then I wouldn't have got into my photography. I wouldn't have met my husband. It was again, it was a butt kicking time of my life, which put me on my next trajectory. Really.
Yeah.
So
when was that? Did you say 2010?
It was 2003, 2002, 2003, that kind of.
Oh, I thought you said something about 2010. I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah.
Because I was just thinking that was a huge year of change for me too.
Yeah.
When I got out of mainstream work,
yeah.
And then I tried for 2 years to find work. I was in my 60s, couldn't find traditional work. And so that put me back into the tarot and the astrology again that I studied for years. So we are set on our path based upon certain things, that propel us. And I've always been on a spiritual path, but it was my true growth came from living in England and how I grew there in the different people I met and the, things like that. So I wouldn't be the same person if I hadn't spent 16 years in England. And I've always known that I would live in another country from the time I was a little kid. I thought it would be France. I studied French You know, it was about as close to France as I could get, and we did have a summer place in
Oh,
France.
you did, didn't you? I
So
remember. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So somehow there, deep inside me, I knew that they were going to, and I married a foreigner, you know. And interestingly, I've got a fifth house cusp in Sagittarius, which rules foreigners. Fifth house is love affairs. So I married a foreigner.
Ah,
That's how, I mean, you can just read so much about a chart. If someone's got a strong Jupiter, you can almost be sure education is important to them, travel, foreign languages, foreign places. You can just tell so much about a person from their chart,
yeah.
you know?
So if somebody wanted to come to you for a astrology reading, you do different types, don't you? So you can have a
Yes.
kind of a short burst, or you can
Yep.
have a really long
A
kind of
really
let's get
long
into
one.
the
Yeah.
nitty gritty. So
Exactly. Yeah.
just explain some of the things that you do.
Well, like what we just did, a soul path reading, you know, which would tell you how you're likely to achieve what your destiny is and what you're likely to, you know, what we just went through. And then again, I can do like a solar return, which would be uh, a look at the year ahead, you know, where your focus might be, where your energies are going to be located, if any eclipses are going to impact you in any way significantly. Lunations are important, new and full moons. So you could go through a whole year of where the new and full moons are going to
Mm,
fall in a chart and determine which would be the best times to seek prosperity or possibly to, you know, change jobs or things like
mm.
that. Then I could also do a whole natal chart with transits and progressions, which is very in depth.
Yeah, so that
You
goes more
know,
into the kind of the personality basics, so the building blocks as well of your
yeah,
person.
the building blocks. Yeah. Or I could just do, if you already know what your natal chart is, then I could do transits, you know,
Yeah.
to see what's occurring. What generally, if somebody wants a natal reading, they'll get that first, which gives them all the information about how they operate, where what they should be doing, and all of that. But uh, once you have that, you don't need it done every time. So the next time you just have a transits. Okay, where what are the planets doing that are going to impact my planets? You know,
So
so
lots of people have trouble sort of finding their, you know, their exact birth. But for the natal nodes, that's not actually, it doesn't,
no,
because it's the same nodes over
yeah,
18 months, isn't it? So they don't
yes.
know their time of birth for,
Yes.
yeah.
What you get if you have the time of birth, you get the information that I gave you, which has to do with what the sign on your midheaven, where your moon is. Some
Yeah.
of those things you can't determine because the moon moves rapidly through a chart. So you wouldn't be able to pin the houses that the energy's in, but you could
Mhm.
see, like particularly if you've got uh, close to 0 or 29 degrees or something, things can be askew because you don't know where the planets exactly
Yeah,
were.
because that's the
But you
last
can
bit, isn't
pretty much get, but the nodal axis, you can, yeah, you can do a soul path with the nodal axis, and you don't have to have the exact, you can have, you know, if you know the birth day and place, you don't have to have the
it?
time for the nodal one.
So for anybody watching this who is really on a spiritual path and is spiritually orientated and who wants to be of service or know how to be of service in this time, you know, this great time of change where the consciousness in the planet is
Hmm.
rising, so that would be a soul path reading.
Yeah,
They don't need to
that
know
would be a
their
soul path.
time of
Don't
birth.
have to have their time.
Yeah,
And
fantastic.
unfortunately, many people in Europe don't have the times,
Mm,
which is very frustrating for an astrologer because you get so much more
yeah,
detail when you have the time. But
yeah.
again, a soul path reading, you know, it's easy enough to do without the time because you're just dealing with the notes,
Yeah, because
not the,
because
yeah,
they're the same for 18 months, aren't they?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that's brilliant. So if
yeah,
anybody's watching and who
yeah,
wants to get in touch with Sydney for a soul path reading, then I mean, we just use my chart as an example, but I mean
yeah,
everything you said just rings true to me. And even before I stepped onto what I'm doing, I had that kind of knowing inside. It's just
yeah, hmm,
I didn't have the courage to do it before, so I still
hmm,
kind of knew on an intuitive level
yeah,
um what I was supposed to be doing, even if the human side of me just couldn't wrap its head around it.
uh-huh. Well, I just want to look real quick at your, uh-oh, why is my mouse isn't working now?
Mhm.
Well, I can't seem to, there we go. Because your Chiron, you've got Chiron in Aries.
Mm.
So interestingly enough, that's putting yourself out there. So in a way, you probably won't have that much trouble with your Chiron return because you're already working that energy. Your Chiron's in Aries, and Aries is, you know, stepping out there, being the leader.
Yeah.
So so you went from your fear, your Saturn first house. You've moved through that, and you're able now to project yourself. So that's kind of what your Chiron return is about. You putting yourself out there. So you probably won't have that much trouble with it.
Well, fingers crossed.
Well, we
But
can
yes, I
talk
do.
later.
I mean, it
Yeah.
was in that 2000, going back to those eclipses in 2017, it was almost like my soul had left an alarm bell inside me and it went
Yep.
off. And it was kind of like, I could have started doing this work in my 20s or 30s, you know, and I think it's about where you reach mature, you know, how fast or slow that you reach that point. So it's more to do with an energetic frequency, I believe. So when you get to that certain frequency, then that alarm or that folder will open up, and all of a sudden you get kind of like, oh, an envelope, which which
Well,
says
it's like the way you learn anything. You start at the beginning and move forward. So if we came in knowing what our soul path was, you know, and we just go in and say, oh, I got to do this, we do it. But you have to have the experiences that build that energy to its highest point.
And being a past life regressionist, I've seen, you know, that people that at a soul level, I always see it like a bit like a maze, you know, one of those hedge mazes, like in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. And it's kind of like, and how difficult you want the game, the Earth game to be is how far into the maze you put yourself. So if you want
a beautiful analogy.
Yeah. And if you have, you know, if you want to come in this life and think, actually, I just want a bit of an easy ride this life. I had a really, really tough one last, like, you know, I was beheaded or imprisoned or whatever. This life, I just want a nice, you know, nice, easy ride. Then you just put yourself just the other side of the outside hedge. You know, you meet your soulmate at 15, you're married, you know, for 50 years, happily ever after, that sort of thing. And some people do have that kind of life experience, isn't it? And then other people have much more of a difficult path. And I think once we start exploring how we as a soul have planned and decided what we wanted to learn, rather than feeling like we're the victim of everything, then we can really find the gold. We get the treasure from the middle of the maze, take it back, you know, holding it high. And so
there's another thing you mentioned about ancestral lines and stuff. There's also a method in astrology where you can actually, from a person's natal chart, sort of trace back ancestral karma.
Yes.
And it's fascinating how accurate it is. Like, for instance, when I was a child, there was a tragedy in the family, and my mother had to have a couple of us go live with neighbors until the crisis passed or whatever. And that went back generations in my family. Like when my mother was a child, she had to be, I say farmed out, but they were, you know, caregivers, because her mother had tuberculosis and had to be sent away. So, I mean, even those patterns can come down through your ancestral line.
Pattern.
So, yes, and to the exact incident as well, because my twin sister was severely burned. Well, if you look in our ancestral line, one of my father's relatives was severely burned. So even the actual incident could be passed down until the karma is healed.
So what would be the way of healing that? So there's a lot of talk in spiritual circles, isn't there, about, oh, I'm here to heal the ancestral line. And so what would an example of healing that repeating pattern be?
Well, say for me, there was an abandonment issue because, you know, I lost my father at an early age. You know, when my sister at 3 years old was burned, my parents' focus shifted, you know, so I had a lot of abandonment issues. So I have to work on in my lifetime. Part of my life path as a one was to learn to take care of myself and be independent. you know, so that I wouldn't have to go to someone else. I
Yes.
learned to take care of myself. So you can heal some of those by working upon your own uh, issues that have been passed down. Sometimes, like even, you know, pregnancy in my family was very difficult. My mother lost a baby at birth. I had a premature baby. My other sister had a miscarriage. My other sister had the Rh negative factor. So those things, you know, trouble with children, uh, any of those things are passed down ancestrally.
So what you're
So
saying is that if you heal that trauma that you've had, if you heal those wounds that you've had from those experiences, then going forward, you know, to your children and grandchildren, they shouldn't be repeating the same energetic pattern. Is that kind of how it works?
yes, hopefully.
Hopefully.
But of course, my feeling is that I didn't learn until much later in life a lot of my issues. And so having a child at a young age, you know, I wouldn't have been able to help him as much as I could now, you know, because whatever happened, that's already in his DNA. But, you know, now that he's much older and we're reconnecting, I mean, we've always been close, but I feel like I wasn't the mother I could have been. You know how when you reflect upon your life, I was a very young mother. I was 18. I was a kid myself. So a lot of the things I've learned as a much older adult, I wasn't able to pass on to my son. So now is a time for me to try to rebuild, you know, because I'm aware now, but I wasn't when I was a child having a child. So,
but that doesn't mean to say that that's particularly necessary to have it at the time. I mean, you know,
no,
because you've got
no,
that
it could be
awareness now,
resolved now.
haven't you?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
because really time isn't really linear, is it? We're holographic.
yes,
We live in a holographic universe.
yeah.
So if you aware and heal the frequency now, then that resonates out to everywhere
Right.
else that it's vibrating in the field. And that's definitely what I've found with past life trauma, is that if you know, using myself an example, with, you know, I've been dealing with persecution and judgment most of my life, but I understand from the past life regressions I've had that's a pattern that I've had time and time again in other lives. And, you know, many of us that are female healers and therapists and, you know, are,
Right.
you know, have that, you know, we've all been, you know, beheaded,
Wounded, yeah.
burnt,
Whatever.
whatever,
Drowned.
imprisoned
Yeah,
for what we
everything.
believe in,
Yeah.
for standing out, for speaking up. So
Right.
so we're here trying, you know, healing that vibration as well. But what I've found is that the more that I've healed that within me, then it's I'm able to heal everywhere else that's vibrating in my field. So actually the kind of the past life regression recalls that I tend to have now, they're no longer those heavy persecuted judgment ones that are coming up, because my higher self knows that I've kind of dealt with that, and I don't shown it anymore. So yeah, so it's kind of understanding about the quantum field and how it works is a real game changer. And of course we're back to where we started, that everything is energy and vibration.
Exactly.
So we're going to kind of wrap it up, because we've been
probably gone over
ages.
Way over.
So I'm gonna so how would people get in touch with you, Sydney, if they wanted to?
Okay, my email address is JS like Sydney, P like Paul, Tarot, TAROT, @gmail.com.
Great. Okay. And by the time I put this out, you might have a Facebook page or a website, right?
Well, I'm hoping, because I'm still working on trying to get a name. You know, my whole life was in England, and then I come over here and I've been stuck in COVID, so I haven't really feel like I've started my life over here. But I'm trying to come up with a name, you know. So, and my husband's working on a website, which he has never done. So in the meantime,
learning curve.
Exactly, it's a big learning
curve. I can put your email into the information.
My email, yeah. So, and then when I get more information, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, and you are a member on the Soul Collective, aren't you? The Facebook group.
Yes.
And for anybody here who's watching this on YouTube and you don't know what the Soul Collective is, it's amazingly supportive group on Facebook. So there's a few of us that got together. Minty May and his lovely wife Mand May set up the group, and they kind of created it. But really it's a really safe space for people on a spiritual path that want to raise their consciousness and awareness. So and all the approved readers on there and the approved therapists are they're all heart-led, conscious you know, people. There's no kind of like ego or competition involved. So if you want to join the Facebook group, then the Soul Collective, just pop it in the search bar and you'll find us. And yeah, we'd love to welcome new members all the time. So thank you for this fascinating
Thank you,
Sydney. I knew it would be like great. I knew it would be fascinating. And yeah, I hope some people come and book you, because
well, I hope so too.
okay.
Well, I mean, your chart just magnificently shows that you are on the right path.
Yay!
I mean, it just all comes together from your chart. Yeah. And interestingly, I'm finding that so many people that do what we do have a soul path where their North Node is either in Aquarius or Pisces, which I find very interesting because Aquarius is the humanitarian energy and Pisces is the spiritual energy.
Yeah.
My husband, my twin, my son, we're all on that same path. So again, you will probably see within your soul group, many people will have these very similar paths. They will just get to them in a different direction based upon their charts. But I find that quite interesting that so many of the people I'm seeing have this nodal axis on those two, Pisces and Aquarius. Yeah.
And of course, we draw to us the people that need us, you know, that we have something to offer, don't we? And vice versa.
Right, yeah.
People that can help us. People are drawn to us that we can help, and everybody finds their own resonance with, you know, one healer or astrologer or numerologist, you know, works for some and then not for others. So I think that's a really good a good thing to bring up about not having this competition. You know, you don't have to compete with each other, because we all have our unique energy and our unique vibration, and some will never be everybody's cup of tea, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
but concentrate on the people that are your cup of tea, and you can't go far wrong.
Exactly. And sometimes as a reader, you know, if I've done a fair and I've read for 15 people, invariably there'll be somebody that I find I can't read for. It's just, there's something, the energy stays to be right. And so, you know, I've been to mediums that people told me were great and they didn't give me anything. I've been to others that people rubbished and they gave me everything.
Yeah.
So it's such an individual thing that there's no need for competition, because like you said, there's a trillion of us out there.
And I think the more you align,
particularly now we're coming out of the woodwork now.
Yes. And I think the more that you trust anyway, the more that you surrender and trust that you co-create with the universe, the more that we, you know, we connect to our higher selves through the heart. And when we connect through the heart, then we go straight to the higher mind. So that, what you said, the Aquarian sort of higher mind, and you bypass those sort of lower ego programs, the limited society programming, the cultural, you know, problems and stuff. So heart centering first is so important. So you can stay on the line, Sydney, but I just want to say goodbye to everyone else that's watching, and thank you for joining me on this amazing soul chat today. And I'll see you.
Thank you for allowing me to.
Bye.